Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. So today I'm going to be going over various bits of news that have happened. We've got an overview of some of the new graphical effects coming in patch 6.1, a few quick notes from Bashiok about some of the dailies in patch 6.1, some numbers for the Ebola goat in terms of how much it raised, then Blizzard released a Twitter video which has garnered quite the response. I'll talk a little bit about that. And then also we've got some stuff about the trailer for the Warcraft movie, or more accurately, trailers. Don't worry though, there's not actually a trailer, but there is some discussion that came from Duncan Jones, who is the director. Now, first of all, let's have a bit of a chat about these graphical effects, because these are actually really cool. So, one of the biggest things that I noticed that kind of sucked about the transition from Mists of Pandaria to Warlords in terms of the graphical things is that they actually completely gutted anti-aliasing. Apparently there were some problems with essentially some of the main engine changes they were making, which meant that they had to cut out a few of the AA options, which meant that we were left with CMAA, which is a form of anti-aliasing that really, well, it kinda sucks. But the good news is that there are new AA options coming in the patch. Now, if you don't know what anti-aliasing is, I'm not going to go into a technical explanation here, but essentially, it's like when you can see the pixels, to put it in a real layman sort of perspective, it's when you see little squares on things that should be, like a diagonal line or something like that. One instance where it's very noticeable, actually, is just if you're on your mountain, you're going towards maybe a set of stairs, right? Like, say, the ones in the Stormwind Palace, you'll see this kind of crawling effect. Now, that's because of there being a large aliasing problem, so with these new anti-aliasing options, you actually see a massive improvement. I've checked these out on the PTR, and it really is massively better. It's kind of ridiculous, so that's really, really nice to see. Now, there are a few other things that have been added, so on the front of Screen Space Ambient Occlusion, or SSAO as it's more commonly sort of referred to, we have got some updates. So, they have basically added in a new setting, which is HBAO+. This is essentially a more graphically pleasing version of the current SSAO that's in the game, and what it's going to do is it's going to mean that you'll have more realistic lighting, or more shading, I suppose. Just areas of darkness should look quite a bit better. You can see it in the comparison screenshots that we've got here, though YouTube encoding will probably wreck all of these graphics comparisons, which is a little bit unfortunate. Now, they say that if you're running the recommended spec of computer, then CMAA is still the best thing to go with. But for many of us with the more powerful rigs, it's definitely nice to get that good HBAO+. Now, there is one other thing that they have added, which I think is very cool, and that is essentially a bit of an overhaul. They said that they are doing a bit of a lighting makeover, and they're introducing per pixel deferred point lighting. So what this essentially means is that various scenes of the game are going to be lit a lot better, and if you look at the screenshots that they've supplied, you, I think, can absolutely see the difference. It's quite staggering, actually. It's about time they had something like that in the game, frankly, because the old lighting was a little bit ugly, but it's great to see that the engine people are working on stuff like this. Of course, World of Warcraft is an old game, but they've really managed to, I think, do a very good job on this patch. Definitely exciting. I suppose if they were going to look at something else in terms of the technical side of the game, I would really like it if actually they would perhaps, start supporting SLI or Crossfire, because I think as time has went on and those technologies have become far more stable and I think affordable as well, for an example, like 670 SLI is a very, very good bargain, and I suppose with the new line of AMD cards coming out pretty soon, a mid-range card in Crossfire or SLI does make a lot of sense for many people, but it won't give you any performance gain in World of Warcraft. I've got to assume a lot of that, though, is down to the fact that it is an old engine, and perhaps there's just inherent problems with supporting technologies like that. Bit of a pity, but anyway, let's move on to some stuff that Bashiok said. So essentially, somebody said that in Mists of Pandaria, when they were doing dungeons, they had more of a reason because they could just keep on going back for things like Valor points. And they said that now in Warlords, what's the point in returning? Because, well, once you've got the gear, there's no real incentive to go back. So what Bashiok said in response was that 6.1 introduces new daily quests, which set you in a number of tasks, as we know, and he said about getting a random task every day, with those tasks being out of a possible pool of tasks. That's just the 5 quests that I've already talked about on the channel, and he said that one of those is about completing a specific dungeon, and you'll get a bag with a bit of gear, which is up to a 655 item level. I'm not 100% sure of the drop rate of that, actually, but again, I just want to say, because I think it is worth mentioning here, that yeah, that's getting you to go back and do 6.0 content, but is that really new content? Well, no, it's not new content, it's sending you back to do some old stuff. Now, Bashiok also did mention that you could go to, say, your friend's Garrison and pick up the quests that they have, because everyone will have different quests. That means that basically if you want to do all the quests in one day, you could, you just need to have loads of different friends so you can hop along the Garrisons. I'm kind of interested to see what everyone thinks about that, because on the one hand, yeah, it's going to be good for getting people to play with each other, or at least go to each other's Garrisons and talk to other people. But on the other hand, will that foster much in terms of lasting relationships, or will this just be a bit of an annoying thing in guild chat where everyone's trying to get into everyone else's garrison, and if you go on the in-game group finder, it'll just be loads of people trying to garrison swap? I get why they're trying to do this, and, they want people to be visiting each other and talking more and foster more social interaction, but I do wonder that if on a daily basis, it's just going to be a source of frustration, kind of like a barrier to getting these quests. It will be very interesting to see what the community's reaction to that is once it actually comes out. But until then, what do you think about that in principle? This idea of, having the 5 quests and then sort of hopping around your friends' garrisons to pick up the other ones. Kind of interested to hear what you guys have to say. Anyway, let's move on to the next point in the news, and that is our good friend Argy, the Ebola Goat. The Ebola Goat has made $1.9 million, so there you go, that's pretty cool. But it actually didn't make as much as the Cinder Kitten, which made $2.3 million, or the Brew Pup, which made $2 million. I don't really know why that is. I think it's pretty cute. Maybe something so heavily Draenei themed just doesn't appeal to as many people, but whatever. I thought it was pretty cool, and not much else to say about that. Charity's pretty good, so just thought I'd flag that up in today's video. Though do note the donations were only running during December, so if you purchase one now, that money is going straight to Blizzard, and there will be no charity stuff going. So there you go. Also, it was 100% of the profits, which I think is actually really cool as well. It wasn't a 50-50, this was actually just a purely charitable effort, which is nice. So with that said, let's talk a little bit about the Twitter integration. Now, before doing this, I was a little bit unsure as to whether this was newsworthy, but the way I see it, they released a video that's got 58,000 views and a very heavy dislike ratio, and I think there's a good point to make here, so I declare this is newsworthy. Now, the video itself, as I said, 58,000 views, 316 likes, and 2,500 dislikes as of the time of me recording this. And it's just a 38-second video, no narration, pretty cool music in the background actually, just going over how the new Twitter functionality works, which is fair enough in its own right. And I would like to make the point here that I don't think that the reason why this is so heavily disliked is completely to do with Twitter. Obviously, some people just see a social media thing, they think, oh, that's a bit dumb and lulzy, and of course they dislike, which is fair enough. If you dislike the thing, then I suppose it's reasonable enough to hit the dislike button, I suppose. But I think the real reason why this has had such a powerful reaction amongst players is that patch 6.1 is really quite a content-sparse patch. We, in terms of core content, are getting 5 daily quests, one of which is doing a dungeon that we already have, one of which is killing a raid boss that we already have, one of which is a profession daily, which takes hardly any time to do, and the other 2 are actually pretty cool. But still, it's not a great deal of unique content, unfortunately. And I think that with the context of an otherwise rather sparse patch, or a patch where I think there's a lot more whimsical things, like say the music roll and the selfie camera, people then see this and think, oh really? Really? This is what we're getting in patch 6.1? And I don't think it's because Twitter integration is like the arch evil of the universe. I think it's just because of the context of patch 6.1 being rather content sparse, and really if you compare it to 5.1, you compare it to other things, there's no real way to paint 6.1 as a content-rich patch, especially when you consider it actually is coming out quite a bit after 6.0. Anyway, with the point about the Twitter integration made, let's talk a little bit about the Race to World First in Blackrock Foundry. Now, this is almost definitely changed by the time that this video comes out, but currently we've got a whole slew of guilds that are at 7 out of 10 Mythic, with, of course, Method being at the very top. It's pretty amazing, actually. Method get in a day late because they're a European guild, and they roll over all the Americans, as Method tend to do. However, Paragon have been catching up very fast, and they're now also at 7 out of 7, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes. There is actually a good chance that Paragon, based on just how quickly they caught up to Method, might actually eke out a win. Now, on the US front, we have got Midwinter, who are also at 7 out of 7, and then we've got Blood Legion, Ascension, Nightmare Asylum, Avast, a bunch of Russians who I can't pronounce from scratch, and then Blizno. So that's kind of the current roster at the minute. Basically, loads of guilds are at 7 out of 7. It's a very close race this time around, and we will just have to wait and see how it goes. But it's definitely been very interesting to watch. I suppose at this stage it's really anyone's game, and honestly I am completely rooting for either Method or Paragon to win because they're great, and I like it when either of them win. Plus, I want Paragon to do well anyway because generally a pretty badass boss kill video comes out of that, which is always a nice thing. So let's just quickly talk about the final bit of news, which is the Warcraft movie trailers. Now, there's no release dates or anything like that, but Duncan Jones was talking a little bit on Twitter about marketing the movie and just trailers, and somebody said that the idea of dual trailers was pretty cool, so an Alliance-themed one and a Horde-themed one, and he actually said that he pitched that to Legendary, and we'll have to see. Definitely an interesting one, actually. It's a trailer that I think would work very well for World of Warcraft players who are kind of invested in either one of these sides, but perhaps to the general audience, it might be a little bit confusing or just underwhelming because you gotta remember, like, if you just see a trailer which is only orcs, then that's probably gonna sort of shunt a lot of people off. If you see a trailer that's maybe only kind of generic fantasy humans, then again, that might convey a message that it's pretty generic to people, and they might just think, ah, well, whatever, I don't particularly care about this. That's one risk of running these split trailers, depending, of course, on how the trailers are executed. They can have an Alliance, like, focused trailer about their side of the story and include a bit of sympathy towards the Horde. They can do that, but I just think it would be very hard to do. Honestly, one trailer would work, or I just mean a trailer that's got both sides, I suppose. If they had a bit of both sides, and they kept it more focused on, like, the tone, the feel, the visuals, and maybe not specific story things, because there really is a lot to cover there, and I don't know if it could be feasibly done within a trailer. But really, the main point here is that the trailer is not, I don't think it's for us as World of Warcraft players. We're going to see this movie anyway, and the trailer is a piece of marketing. What it has to do is market how good or interesting or whatever this film will be to the general audience who has no idea what a Warcraft is. They do not know how to craft the war. Therefore, it probably should have a different slant because it does have a different objective from, say, a trailer that's supposed to hype us up. We're already probably hyped up for this. But anyway, that's really all that I've got to say about the trailer. I personally don't really watch that many trailers because they're often laden with spoilers and they don't always communicate the film itself that well anyway. I prefer to just sit back and read reviews when the movie comes out. And that's, I think, what matters the most for World of Warcraft. A trailer that's got, you know, fantasy orcs and humans is only going to appeal to so many people. But I think what will actually work is if this movie gets reviews from people who are not gamers, who are not involved in gaming whatsoever, that work for publications like, I don't know, the New York Times and The Guardian, etc., etc., you know, publications with a lot of circulation, then also internet reviews and stuff that goes on to Rotten Tomatoes. If the average person just sees that the movie is well received amongst people who have got no idea what the game universe is, then I think that's what's really going to matter. So ultimately, yeah, trailers is nice and whatever, but what actually matters is, of course, the quality of the finished product. Anyway, that's really it for me. Thank you very much for watching the news. If you've got any thoughts on the various topics covered, then of course leave them down in the comments, and I'll see you next time.